we have one more prepared question here, and then the rest will come from you. So if you have a question now, please go ahead and hold it up so that our ushers can pick them up. And our last question will also have a 1-minute response. Development often has negative as well as positive impacts on a community. Large developments left unchecked can disrupt communities and displace residents and small businesses. Puget Sound Sage and its member organizations are using community benefits agreements as a tool to address community impacts and promote development that benefits workers, neighbors, small businesses, and developers. These contracts signed by both community groups and by the developer would clearly outline the community advantages of a given project. A recent example is the Community Benefits Agreement signed between the developer of the Dearborn project at the site of the Seattle Goodwill and a number of community, neighborhood, and labor organizations that also participated. Do you support the concept of community benefit agreements? How will you actively encourage developers to enter into a community benefit agreement with community organizations?
I do support the concept of community benefits agreement. In my 25 years in real estate, I, in a way, have handled many of these agreements between communities and the developers. One that comes to mind is I was the real estate acquisitions manager for King County Housing Authority when we redeveloped Park Lake Homes, 99 acres in White Center. And we had a series of Tuesday meetings for, I think, about 6 months, where we regularly met with all people involved in the deal. And what was negotiated was everything. The community center, the retail space, what the units were going to look like. It was a win-win. In the city, we can do the same thing. What it really starts with is empowering the community to come forward with their best vision of what they want their community to look like, and then to give the developer some flexibility in making that happen in an economic way. The city has to do a better job of linking the hopes and dreams of the community with the hard business reality of the developer. That's something I would look forward to doing on the city council.
As we create new development in the city, well, it's going to change things for sure. And so I think the critical thing is that as we make these changes, we're making sure that they're positive changes. I mean, right now, even without building a single thing, our city is changing. Housing is getting too expensive for families. A lot of our school kids' needs aren't being met. Our transportation system isn't working very well for everybody. And so as we move forward and invest in these new developments, it's critical that we make sure that these developments are working for the people in the neighborhood and the people of the city. So I absolutely do support community benefit agreements. And I think the role we can play as a city council member is often in these developments, it requires some flexibility from the city to make them happen. And we can sit at the table and say, the only way we're going to create this flexibility so this project gets done is if it's a project that everyone in our city is going to benefit from. And that's the role of the community benefit agreement, and I do support those. Thanks.
So in the 90s, I worked on 4 neighborhood plans in our community. The East Lake, Wallingford, Denny Triangle, and the Central Area neighborhood plans. And more recently, over the past 6 years, my job has been helping to run King County parks during time of budget crisis. And the way we've been able to build new parks in a budget crisis is by implementing similar 3-way agreements where you have a community partner, a government, and a private partner. And together we work to make sure that we're making parks and investments that communities want, that work for business, that work for government. I am absolutely in support of community benefit agreements and have a great track record in actually implementing them in a successful way, from building new community centers to soccer fields out in Preston. The things that I'm looking to get out of community benefit agreements are the things that I'm hearing communities want. Public, safe streets, good streetscapes, vibrant business districts, affordable housing, and transit.
I think that community benefit agreements are actually going to be uppermost as we move forward in the next few years. As recession begins to pick up, there will be pressure on the council, good pressure on the council, with the community, to basically not to allow the kinds of things we've done in the past without a gain for the community. There's a thing called street vacancies, and we tend to give them for a very low threshold of benefits. We need to raise the bar. And what we need to do is a number of very specific things. They have to use local apprenticeships. Therefore, we guarantee job training for people in the residence. We need to make sure that they meet WIMBY goals, making sure they use women minority-owned businesses on the contracts. When the development goes in, we need to make sure it has a high percentage of low-income housing. And we need to know when they have retail space, it's not just for franchise space, but the space is divided up for local retailers to allow local people an opportunity to have that business space. And finally, we need to allow for people who are employed there to be to do card checks so that they want to join organized labor.
I've been a strong supporter of community benefit agreements, and I enjoy the support of both David West and Elena Dix of SAGE. There are a number of things, and I certainly agree with what the other candidates have said. Job training, particularly around apprenticeship training for local residents, particularly minority youth residents, to give them the kind of job skills to help them succeed into living wage jobs. Connecting with the program here at Seattle Vocational Institute and other community colleges to connect students with these job training opportunities in neighborhood developments. Build the community, the benefit agreement concept into the neighborhood planning process. 3 neighborhoods are going through the planning process right now in South Seattle. Build that concept into neighborhood planning as those neighborhoods grow and develop. I have been a strong supporter of a passage of an inclusionary zoning law by the city that would require developers to include a certain percentage of low-income units in their projects. That's one way.
One thing that hasn't been discussed here is experience. I was Ron Sims' lawyer. I was chief of the civil division in King County, and I actually have drafted these agreements. I drafted the first project labor agreement as an example for King County, and what this meant is that we had all of the labor unions working on a $200 million project for Harborview Hospital. I drafted that. I made sure that King County was accountable to it. So with a project labor agreement or with a community benefit agreement, making sure that we have apprenticeship programs that are real and bona fide, that we have prevailing wages in all of the contracts, so that people who are working on it have good benefits and are working in family wage jobs. Within a community benefit agreement, I want to see real neighbors being engaged in this, not just people coming from the outside that are negotiating or debating what ought to be included in it. So we're looking at schools, community centers, who is working, making sure we have apprenticeship programs and jobs for the local economy. And that's something that I've had experience doing.